Okay, everybody, thanks for watching. This is going to be a short video review of several bike races that occurred in the last 2 weeks up here in the Northern Hemisphere. We're getting into the end of the season. We've had several state road races and state criterium championships, and I wanted to share a few of my athletes' files with you so that you could sort of get an idea of where their focus was and where they ended up. Now, the first one that we've got is a client in New Hampshire. I'm sorry, yeah, up in the Northeast somewhere. And we've got a very nice crit race that happened to occur on a short course with nothing but right-hand turns, and it had a very short, very steep hill. So you can see this looks like the stalagmites of a cave. They're very, very regular. But what you also see is that every single hill took a bite. Every single acceleration up the hill took a bite. He punched out of every corner, but you've got 1, 2, 3, go, 1, 2, 3, go, 1, 2, 3, go, 1, 2, 3, go. And every interval ended up being in the red Xert or high orange Xert focus readings, MPA, wattage. So now you can see that we're biting into the MPA, letting it recover, biting into it, letting it recover, take a couple of risks in the first half. Then there was a crash, and a number of people had been dropped, or they had to neutralize things a little bit. MPA comes back, but look at the last several laps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So for the last 7 laps, he was in the mix. And when we switch back over to the mouse setting, what we'll get is, just a second here. Let's let this thing finish. Come on. There it goes. Okay, well, I guess that's not going to work. Then let's go back to the spotlight. Anyway, what we'll look at is that as we go back over here, the final effort, I'm going to zoom in this way. I'll do it the old-fashioned way. Well, that doesn't want to work either. Okay. Anyway, long story short, he had his breakthrough at the finish line, giving it everything he had and leaving with nothing left. Really proud of this guy. He was the top category finisher for a men's 40+ race. So he had category 1 through category 4, and he was the highest placed category 3 racer. And he said this year was the race was about 1 mile per hour faster than previous efforts. And so it was a real sharp race with a lot of struggle in it. So very proud of him. I like seeing this. You can see where he had his breakthrough right there in the final effort. And you can see all that time spent in red. His focus duration was 1:53 for the period of time. Let me swap back out again. Take advantage of it. Scroll while I can. Let it repopulate. And here we go for 43 minutes. Focus was in the 1:53 range. We had trained him for a 2-minute focus. I think this was a good result. And again, I cannot account for skill, but I can help with stamina, speed, and strength. So that was kind of a good first start. Now, let's go ahead and open up another rider. Okay, so now let's take a look at a masters racer he's been on this journey with me for about 5 or 6 years. He's lost weight every year. His power for threshold has gone up every year, and his anaerobic capacity has improved just about every year. And if we take a look at this was a traditional cross-country race. He didn't turn his power meter, his recording unit on until he got to about a quarter of the way through the ride. But what you can see in this area right here is this is an area where he was able to bite into his MPA. That separated him and gave him a stronger position. He then took some more work, did some more work, took some more solid pulls, worked with a group, and was able to sort of set a gap. And after that, he was able to marshal his resources and took one last pull on some rolling hills, sort of getting into the final southbound leg, makes the turn, and then he's got one or two more struggles to go through. He's got a nice big MPA, but the biggest issue with this one is that if we look right over, let's see here, the whole thing took place in the middle of the afternoon in Texas heat. And so what we learned from that is, and I'm going to show you two or three more of these. Just because we have it in our signature doesn't mean we can always grab it when we have to. We have to think about ways to either dig a little deeper and beat our perception of exhaustion or extremes, or stay on top of our hydration with cool water or ice bags in the uh, uh, map pockets, other things like that. And so I don't think he did anything wrong. I think he worked really, really hard. And again, he finished with in a sprint for third. But the capacity may have been there. I think that overall the heat and the terrain and probably some wind may have affected him as well. So that's just sort of an example right there. Okay, now this is the same course, but this was instead of racing the 60 plus, this was the 50 plus race for men. And this rider, as you can see, he's got a nice threshold. He's got a very good HIE. He's got a good peak power. He has a nice fitness signature. However, the difference is instead of it being one lap, this was at least two. And you can see a number of areas where he really had to dig into his MPA in order to affect his performance in the race. And one of the things that I think is interesting is he banked a lot of his energy, like anybody should or would, in a race like this, and then he spent it in strategic locations. Let's throw altitude up there, and then let's zoom in a little bit on the second half of the race specifically. Let it populate. And what we're going to get is here, this hill right here. I knew from the beginning this was going to be this is a northbound leg. It's a short, steep hill out of a creek bottom. This is done on an Army base. And this was where he started off with maximum power of 1152. And after a good, solid surge of several minutes, he got down into the 600s. So he was very close to what I would call exhaustion and or expiration, but it obviously set him apart. He then was able to recover even through two more hills, and then he was able to try again. Notice this is right at the turnaround mark. This is kind of an infamous area as well. A lot of steepness. You can't get much of a breakaway here, and that's something that we need to think about. Then it's after that that maybe some good stuff can happen. He dug deep again, didn't make a difference. Everybody kind of regrouped, and he marshaled his resources for the final several miles. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 big attacks, several short, big, quick little surges. They bit into his MPA, and unfortunately, again, I think it was a heat issue. I don't think it was a performance issue. He finished in the top 10, but he had sort of run out of steam slightly early. And so again, I think this was a very good, noble effort. One of the things we are going to work on with all of these riders is learning how to pursue that intensity out another 10, 15, 20, even 30 seconds, so that you can suffer through it because the MPA is there, but we've got to make sure that we are cool. We've got to make sure we are hydrated. We've got to make sure that we are sugared, and we've got to make sure that we know we can do it and still recover. That's the big difference right there. So now let's go take a look at one of our other athletes. Now, this is one of my more interesting files. This athlete is a 50-plus female. She's really only been riding for one season, not even a year. And what we did was we found somebody that had a lot of talent, and then we worked on developing their ability to tolerate the pain and suffering that occurs at high intensity. And again, that's where Xert really comes out strong. The athlete ended up with a peak power in the 800 range, HIE of 18.6, threshold power of 248, and this is a state championship victory file right here. So what we can take a look at is if we add the altitude back in, here are those same three hills. Here is that hairpin, and then here is the other hairpin where the other rider was pushing and recovering and pushing and covering. So what we can do is you can see this was, I think it was just a one lap race. Yeah, just a one lap event. So she gets out of the creek bottom and she digs deep. She's climbing and climbing and climbing. She's pushing her MPA down with high watts. And then she knows that she's still got some work to do. So she lets her MPA recover. Here comes the big hill where she gets out of the saddle and climbs, and MPA once again drops. It's down to the sub 500, so she's getting really, really close to what might be considered, risky territory. Comes back up. She's got one more surge that she puts in before the hard right-hand turn. But you'll notice for the right-hand turn itself, she really doesn't dig terribly deeply. Well, again, at this point, what I suspect is that everybody was playing defense, those that had separated from the main pack, and they're kind of looking at each other and they're sort of riding together, and they're just seeing, okay, well, do I really get distance out of this surge or not? And again, it was a game of kings and pawns, or in this case, queens and pawns, and they decided to work well to work together. Here we've got another good climb, another good dip in the MPA down to the 527 range. So again, she only has 800 watts. She's already eaten up about 35 or 40% of that. Kind of interesting. Lets the body recover. She's heading southbound. Notice this is an afternoon ride, so it's very, very hot. And she has an attack. She goes out, eats into her MPA, has a close call. Now watch this. This is really interesting. Here she is with a healthy suppressed, not depressed, but suppressed MPA. Watts are up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. Some of that is terrain, and some of that is breaking away with a strong rider. So think about that. Then she's got a little dip. She gets some power, bites into that reserve on the MPA, goes out, and then notice this final area right here. So we've got a climb and a climb and a climb and a climb. She's letting her MPA recover. She is one of a party of two, and right there at a minute 34, basically the last 2.5 minutes of the race, she puts a little surge in. Her competition falls away. And look, she rides from a minute 33.14 all the way to the finish line at a minute 35. So she's got 90 plus seconds right at or above her threshold. That's all she needed. That's all she needed, because she had done the attack work and softened up her competition earlier by going out and doing several of these: pull, recover, pull, recover, pull, recover, pull, recover, paying attention to her MPA and her wattage colors, knowing that she might have had this in there. Then, again, once the moment occurred, she was able to get away, stay away, and accelerate all the way to the finish. Those are 3 quick files of some athletes that I had 2 weekends ago. It took me a while to kind of get all this stuff up and running, but I hope this has been a little bit of information for you. Don't forget to take some risks when you race your bike. Don't forget to use the signature so that you can bite into your MPA and then use it to recover, bite into your MPA and use it to recover, and know that if your signature is accurate, that you can extend those efforts out a little bit longer, even in conditions where the environment is slightly extreme, because it's 10 or 15 seconds here, 5 or 10 seconds there that can make the difference between getting to the line with a select few or getting to the line by yourself. All right, thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to leave them down below, and we will see you out on the road or trail. Take care.